Okay, nicely, I was able to carry this entire assembly out to the backyard with a little assistance at the doors by Vanessa. What I'm doing now is trying to characterize the Imager's terrestrial performance to get a better idea of what I can expect when I'm out under the night sky. This is the view of a very distant sign that's up on the hillside. Let me show you where it's at. Okay. We're looking down between two structures in our backyard, and I'm zooming, going to full magnification. So you can see it pretty much right there inside the view. Here's the view once again through the TFT monitor. That's a significant amount of magnification. You might even actually be able to see it through the finder scope here. Yeah, sort of. Alright, I would like to get the magnification down because one of my goals for a small scope with a wide field is to be able to encompass the entire Veil Nebula all at the same time. And that's located in Cygnus. It's very beautiful. Should give an extraordinary view through the CCD imager. Right? But to capture the entire veil at once, you have to encompass about 2.5 degrees of sky. So obviously, I want to experiment with the focal reducer. To be very careful here because I'm manipulating the camera and I'm also going to remove the imager at the same time. I'm going to drop something. I'll have to decide between the imager and the camera. So here we go. I'm sitting in the middle of the knob, backing off. You can see, here's the imager without any lens system in it, neither the IR, UV, blocking filter, or the Barlow system. So let's see how we can set this up. Putting the imager down. Let's go with the Barlow. Here's the Barlow, and it is threaded to fit into the camera. So you can see how it's done. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and then screw it in. So, having threaded in the Barlow lens, you can see that it actually does have some optical coatings on it to reduce internal reflection, which is always a nice thing. I'm going to now put the imager back in to the draw tube assembly, that focuser assembly. Carefully put it in. Okay, now you'll notice it's not parfocal. But let's take a look with a little adjustment here. Okay, I would say they were probably about right. This is half the magnification, and it is a Barlow 1/2 reduction, or an inverse Barlow lens. And you can see now we have twice as much sky. Alright, the question is, how much sky are we actually seeing? Now my previous estimate was that, ooh, there's some birds on it, isn't that great? Look at that. Anyway, my previous estimate was I was seeing about 45 arc minutes. So if we double that, we should be able to encompass about 1.5 degrees, which, I don't think is going to quite encompass the veil. But you don't know, we're approaching summer, and I'll have an opportunity to turn it up, and we can see how much we can get. My next question is whether I can mount simultaneously the cut filter and the Barlow, which doesn't seem very likely, except with any luck, this filter will screw in to the cannibalized Shorty Barlow mount lens assembly that I'm using in order to achieve proper focus without the diagonal. So let's check that out. Now you can see that I've successfully mounted the IR UV reduction filter into the Barlow lens, and basically the lens, of course, of the Barlow was removed and the threading was perfectly matched to the Barlow itself. So now I have the complete picture here. Inside On the camera itself is the 0.5 reduction Barlow lens that came with the kit, and at the extension of my focuser here using the cannibalized Barlow lens tube, I now have the cut filter, so let's take a look at that. Okay, now I have the full Monty in there. We've got the cut filter plus the reduction Barlow lens, and we have another look at the image on the screen. Now I want you to notice something that's very intriguing. For terrestrial observation or for astronomical observation, carefully I release slightly. You can see the deflection now in the imaging. We can rotate the imager in order to get a normal view of the terrestrial landscape. So what have we accomplished here? Well, we have demonstrated that we can mount the CCD imager onto a short tube 80, achieve focus terrestrially, and no doubt astronomically, because there's plenty of focal travel left. And we can include both the UV filter, which helps, and the IR filter, which helps with the fact that this lens in this telescope is an achromat, and therefore does not bend all the colors of the rainbow to the same focal plane. Meanwhile, we also have the reduction Barlow lens in place, which is installed directly on the camera as delivered, so that we can reduce the magnification enough to get a large field of view for extended deep sky objects. Certainly we will get either the eastern-western component of the veil, all of M31 Galaxy, etc., in the field when we get a chance to look at it. Now going back to terrestrial observations, we can focus. We get depth of field because now we can focus on the bushes in the near ground. We can focus on that in the background. And for instance, if you are interested in bird watching, you can get a correct image view through your telescope by simply rotating the CCD imager, depending upon the angle of the scope. And here you can see I'm at full tilt on an equatorial mount, probably aiming 10 degrees above the horizon. Now, the next thing is all of these cabling and things needs to be set up in such a way that I can move the entire telescope and mount through 360 degrees without having lots of snags and ergonomic problems later on. So that's going to be the thing I'm going to work on next, and I'll show you the results. One of the first goals you have with an equatorial mount is setting it up in such a way that it can image the North Star for alignment. Now, obviously, I've got an overhang here. We're not going to see the North Star, but this is the position it would be in. Now, I have these knurled knobs which allow me to rotate it, but let's just do it a little more coarse fashion so we can move it more quickly. By releasing these clutches here, I can shift the scope around. Notice immediately I snag. So obviously what I want to do is reroute my cables to come between these two legs, the southern legs of the tripod. And that's what I'll work on next. Well, anybody who has had to deal with cabling before, let's say for a recording studio or even your own home entertainment center, knows that cables get to be quite a problem. And that you constantly have to unwind and rewrap them according to different positions. Now I've set all this up to give me the first opportunity to see whether or not the telescope will reposition itself freely throughout the sky, potential viewing area of the sky. We've already demonstrated, for instance, that we can get to the north, to Polaris. Now we have the opportunity of going to the western sky, and I can do a full tilt to the south. Wouldn't want to go past there anyway, because of you have to flip the scope over normally anyway. So let's try it again. Let's see if we can get all the way over here. Sure, now I can go to the northeast, I can go to the pure east, or I can go to, once again, I can go deep south. and rotate overhead to the zenith, which you rarely ever observe from anyway. Now, of course, you can, because now you don't have to strain yourself as much because you have the display. Now, having done all that rewiring, the question then becomes, does it still work? Flipping the power on in the battery automatically initializes both the CCD imager, as you can see with the red light turning on, as well as the screen. Notice all the noise on the screen. That's an indication you're not getting any real light, and all it's doing is this is stray discharges of the CCD pushing itself to the point where it's overly sensitive. Now, of course, if I go to the blue of the sky, this is what you'll see, because it has nothing to focus on, and it has nothing to show contrast with. But that's the sky. Ooh, it looks like we are seeing a bit of clouds over there. Presumably we're still in focus. Let's see if we can improve it. So the imager is detecting the clouds. There's a nice bright spot, but once again the imager is overwhelmed or underwhelmed with contrast. And you can see the sky through the camera if you wish right there, which gives a much more high contrast view. Alright, so the DVD imager is working in combination with the TFT color monitor is changing its sensitivity in order to improve image contrast and capture of photons. And that's because in the menuing system, which I hope I can access here, I can make some adjustments if I want in brightness. Let's see, I can flip the image upside down, side to side. Well, let's see if I can get it back. Alright, AV2, I wonder what that mode. There's no input signal for AV2, so there must be a position for another sensor. But anyway, now you can see that you have the capacity to shift things around. Let's see what that does. Down and right. Okay, that's where we want to leave that. The next question is, do we have any of the other sensitivity controls? Now, one thing I did to simplify the interface and the cabling was to actually remove this from the harness of the video controller. But I'm assuming I have these buttons here to do that. So let's push a few of these buttons and see what comes up. I don't seem to be getting any menuing options. So I have to assume that I was a bit hasty in removing this manual control. We will be needing it when we actually use the scope. Manual control right there. Here we go. I'm going to reinstall that. Now, having reinstalled the manual control, let's have a look at some of the functions that we might have in it. Okay, so yes, you do need this hand control in order to be able to adjust various menuing options. You can see right now we're set in outdoor mode. I'm not sure E-zoom, electron zoom is off. Presumably you can turn it on. DIS, I'll have to look into that, play with that later. Privacy mask, motion detection is off. System setting is to the left and the exit out. And the way to get to the exit function is simply press this up and down arrow to navigate various options. Exit. Why is it so? And then you can save or cancel. I'm not going to save because it's already in default mode. And when we get into the actual night sky, we'll have to see how well the default mode menu options work in terms of capturing imagery. So, that be it for part 2 of Gather Round. And we'll see how she performs tonight under the night sky. Once again, so far things are looking very promising. I'd say the key we got right now is I was able to reduce the magnification to about 25x and get the feet while also retaining the cut filter, which is helpful for eliminating heat and stray noise and also improving the focus of the refractoring telescope. So, here we go. Well, There's our first light O star. Happens to be the region around Polaris. Now I'd have to look into the eyepiece to get a sense of whether or not this thing is rendering fainter stars than can be seen through the eyepiece and the telescope at normal aperture. But I'm actually using an aperture stop in front of the scope right now. So in a few moments I'll take it off. But there you go, folks. There's the night sky as it is seen through the CCD imager. The very first time is ST80 and actually operating at about 1.5 inch aperture right now. Signing off. So there's a low-powered view of the Ring Nebula in Lyra right here. Get the camera a little closer to it. Oops, a little out of focus. M57. Very low-power view. It's like a 9.5 magnitude nebula. Notice there's some stationary stars up in the field. Well, those are actually satellites. Sure seem to be a lot of them in Lyra. So you'll see a whole mass of stars going and drifting to the left as the Earth rotates. But there are stars that are staying in a fixed position. Those would be geostationary satellites, 25,000 miles away from the Earth. There's so many of them up there now. I used to be astonished when I'd find them 20 years ago in the sky, but now the whole heavens is populated with them. Anyway, adios, M57.